I didn't necessarily want to have to do this, but I feel the need to debunk and respond to a strange narrative that has come out about my Daytona 500 review and the motivations behind it. You see, there are several response videos out there now responding to that video. Some respond to me directly, others don't use my name at all, but somehow respond point by point to every point I made in the video. Kind of interesting how that works out. But they all seem to come to the same conclusion, and that is because of the fact that I watch other forms of motorsport. God forbid I don't exist in an echo chamber that's only NASCAR and NASCAR 24/7. God forbid I expand my horizons a little bit. But because of that fact, that makes me not understand what makes NASCAR NASCAR. You know, it's funny, when I set off in making that review, I knew the one thing I couldn't do was bring up other motorsports or compare NASCAR to other motorsports. Not only would that cloud the comment section in a war of IndyCar versus F1 or IndyCar versus NASCAR and NASCAR versus F1 and all this ridiculous nonsense that has nothing to do with the race and the problems that that race had, but it would also cloud my opinion as being shrouded in some sort of ulterior motive, which, guess what, people still jump to the conclusion to anyway. So it's amazing to me that I didn't just come out and say something ridiculous for clickbait like, the Daytona 500 is the worst race ever, the Indy 500 is God. But I didn't. I was talking specifically about the Daytona 500, and I didn't mention any other racing series. I didn't mention once F1, IMSA, IndyCar. I didn't even talk about ARCA. The only examples that I gave in that video were Monster Energy Cup Series races. And I kind of find it funny that the same videos that are criticizing me are also the ones that jump straight to the NASCAR versus insert your motorsport of choice here. It's funny, the critics can't show the same restraint as the video that they were criticizing. And I also find it funny that the people who were the first to criticize me for calling this year's Daytona 500 not real racing were also the first to point out to me that how NASCAR is so very different than other forms of motorsport. Yeah, that's the point. I figured that out before I even hit record on that video. In fact, I figured that out for a very long time. You're not giving me any new information. I understand that rubbing is racing in NASCAR. That has never been a revelation. That's nothing new. This is not new information being presented. In fact, my favorite NASCAR finish of the past few years was Fontana 2013. Guess how that race ended up? Two guys rubbing, two guys wrecking to the finish, and neither of them end up winning the race. But there is a line between rubbin's racing and just plain wrecking. And the whole entire point of my video was that this Daytona 500 crossed that line. And another thing, where did this narrative come out that I am in favor of single file racing? I seem to remember that in the review I called the third stage of the race quite boring. But lo and behold, some of my critics go straight to the low-hanging fruit that, well, if you don't like side-by-side pack racing, maybe you should go watch F1 where they drive single file all race long. I find it interesting that people defending a race where a very large portion of it was a single-file freight train are the first to criticize F1 or IndyCar for the same thing. Insecure much? Look, the reason I made that review in the first place is not because I have some anti-NASCAR bias. Take your tinfoil hat off for a second and realize I made that video because I care about the Daytona 500. I care about NASCAR. I don't want to see it made a farce. I don't always agree with Kyle Busch, but he was 100% right when he started answering every interview with, "Everything's great." You see, there's a large portion of the NASCAR fan base out there that doesn't want to accept or wants to blatantly ignore the fact that there are glaring issues in the current product. You see, because of that diverse motorsports background that I'm being criticized for, I have seen this happen in other racing series. NASCAR's not too big to fail. When you spend too much money, you don't have a good enough return on that investment, and at the same time you piss off a large portion of your dwindling fan base, At the end of your biggest race of the year, there's a serious problem there. You've got the folks in power ignoring these issues for one reason or the other. And then they come out and tell all the fans, oh, everything's fine. Everything's just fine. Charters are good for the series. You don't get a group of buddies together and take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Exclusivity in NASCAR is a good thing. Don't worry about the TV ratings. Everybody was just streaming it anyway. We're fine. It's all fine here. We're good. People used to ask me why I didn't do a NASCAR Red Pill show like I do for IndyCar, and this backlash is precisely why. Maybe I'll talk about NASCAR in the future, and maybe I won't. It depends if I'll feel strongly enough about the topic. But for now, I'm going to leave this particular subject to rest. I feel I've said all I need to say, particularly in the last video. This one was just more of a defense that I didn't really feel I would need to make, but turns out I needed to make it. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some more motorsport content. I dropped my mic, but it's too expensive. See you in the next video.